Okay, thank you very much for showing up. I'm Pam Cooley, and I'm the Executive Director of the Global Carsharing Association. Yay! I just want to, in Canada, and I don't know where everybody's from, right, that's come on, but in Canada, what we're often doing is saying what a land acknowledgement of whose land we are on. So I am on the lands of the Mi'kmaq people in the lands of Mi'kma'ki. And if you feel like you're so inclined to do so, you can put the lands that you're on, if you know them, in the chat. I just want to state that, you know, we believe here at the Carsharing Association that if car sharing grows, shared mobility grows. And it's key to the shared mobility ecosystem. If you want to get people out of their personal use vehicles, you've got to give them an option.
Hey, Julian.
Can we have everybody muted, please? Thanks. So we have sponsors for our webinars, and those of you who are suppliers of car sharing organizations, you might want to consider getting a hold of me if you want also to be a sponsor. But thank you to Convatus. They've been a big supporter of the Car Sharing Association, and thank you for your sponsorship for this particular webinar. So who are we? And if you don't know us, we're a worldwide industry for car sharing, the growth of car sharing. That's what we do. We work with car sharing organizations in the shared mobility ecosystem to promote the shift from personal use vehicles to shared mobility modes, and creating more of a positive social environment impact. Yeah, we get together and we have conversations. We facilitate conversations. Our members join us and they support the Car Sharing Association, whether you're a car share organization or whether you're an affiliate or a part of the ecosystem. But mostly what we do is facilitate conversations, and we learn together, and we meet together, and we also have added some advisory services. So if you're interested in having a meeting separately from other people, or you want us to set up a meeting for you, we can do that. We're education, our website, we have a resource library, and we have research papers on there, and we collaborate with others. So if there's something that you need that the Car Sharing Association can provide for you, let me know, and consider joining as a member. Our benefits of membership is, listen, it's an industry association. I'm sure you've been a part of them before. You can go to the website and look at all the benefits, but basically these are some of them. You know, you grow your mobility network. We have a collective social presence. So like if you have an announcement, we can all put it up. Share best practices, get updated on policies from cities that are best practice. We hope to just meet your needs in terms of education and conversations. And particularly, we have quite a bit about how to develop a relationship with the city, and also some optimal city policies that you might be interested in. Our board of directors are on the line on the webinar. I'm the executive director. We have Peter from Colorado. Did you manage to get on, Peter? Okay, Erin?
I did. Yes. Thank you, Pam, and glad to be here.
Thank you. And we have Erin Sullivan, who's also going to be a speaker today. Scott Neely from Enterprise.
Hello, everyone.
Chris Van Es from Australia, from GoGet. Chris, are you there? I know he's there. I saw him come on. And Marco Viviani from Communato. Car sharing in Canada and Paris. Are you there, Marco? Say hi. Nope.
Yes, hi to everybody.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to stop my screen sharing here, and I'm actually going to go to another one. I am going to try something, and I hope everybody can have some patience with me, but I'm going to do this some polling. I'm curious about who's around. So I'm going to try this and I hope it works. All right. So if you have a phone or a computer, you can get this QR code and answer these questions online. There's also, if you don't have your phone, you can go and website menti.com and use the code. All right. Has everybody participated as much as who wants to? Oh, look, here we go. I'll give it a few more minutes because everybody was just trying to get on to the. All right. It's working. Few more minutes. Okay, so lots of people from car share organizations and also part of our network. Okay, thank you. Let me go to the next one. What role do you play in the car share world? Let's see. I don't know how this works now. Is everybody answering? Okay, here we go. Actually, I had done this differently. Nice. Evangelist, I like that. Car share evangelist. Actually, I thought that I had different responses in there that you could choose from, but I didn't. So there you go. All right. Nice. People are still entering. Car share startup. All right. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go to the next one. So one more. So where are you from in the world? And you put a dot close to where you are. We get an idea. I know there's more people there. Chris, where are you? You're supposed to come up on Australia. This webinar is North American centric a little bit because of the time zones. And this is something that we're going to be looking at in the future in terms of having webinars in different time zones so we can accommodate car sharing network around the world. All right. Well, thank you for participating. Then I know that there should be a dot on Australia, but Chris is not participating. Okay. Thank you very much for doing that. All right. So here we are. We're going to talk about car sharing in the EVs and on being on the ground. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about that. We're going to have some polls and a Q&A and a conversation at the end. So it's very, very simple. And we will start with, we have 3 speakers today. And our first speaker is going to be Ziad. Ziad, are you ready to provide some information? Ziad is from the Berkeley Transportation Sustainable Center. Here we go. I'm going to share this. You got it?
Thank you, Pam, for the lovely introduction and for organizing the webinar.
Introduce yourself a little bit better.
I'm going to share my screen and introduce myself, and let's hope this works. 1 second. Okay. My name is Ziad Yassine. I'm a PhD candidate at UC Berkeley in transportation engineering, and very nice to meet everyone on here. Today, I'm going to present like our latest research findings on a car sharing system, which is based on electric vehicles, and it's in Los Angeles. It's called Blue LA. And the focus of the study is mainly on the environmental impacts. So trying to quantify what are the environmental impacts in terms of savings on vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions. I'm not going to go in depth into the study. I'm going to like be high level into the key takeaways and what data we used. And hopefully that would be giving like some insights into operations of other systems that are trying to transition into electrification. So first, some background about this study in Los Angeles.
Excuse me just for a minute, Ziad. I don't know how to make everybody mute. So if everybody can mute, that would be great. Hello?
Okay, so I'm going to start with some background about the study. It's Blue LA in Los Angeles. It started in 2016 through a grant from the California Air Resources Board to pilot electric vehicle car sharing in underserved communities. And the goal is mainly to support the broader transition to electrification in California and seeing how we can support this transition in underserved communities where a lot of people do not have the capability to buy electric vehicles during this transition. So this led to the establishment of a one-way station-based electric vehicle car sharing system. And just looking at the spatial distribution in Los Angeles, the system has 40 stations and it's one way. So a vehicle can be picked up and returned anywhere within these 40 stations. And they are distributed among several neighborhoods like downtown, Westlake, Chinatown, Echo Park. And it's been operating specifically since 2018. That's when it was the official date of launch. And then also they renovated the stations and upgraded the fleet in 2020. So in our study specifically, we are focused on the system, and this is an example of a station outside of Los Angeles Public Library. And each station has parking spaces for 5 cars. And these cars are Chevrolet Bolt electric vehicles. And what's interesting about the system, since it's funded by the California Air Resources Board, and one goal is to provide access in underserved communities. So this led to the establishment of 2 pricing groups or 2 membership groups. The first, they call them the standard members, and the second group is called the community members, which are the income qualified members. And if we look at the membership fees, for example, it's $5 per month, and then it's discounted to $1. And the rental fee is 20 cents per minute, and then it's discounted to 15 cents per minute for the community membership. And both groups, they have the same minimum period of 15 minutes and a maximum period of 12 hours. So moving on into the objective here. So since we want to quantify the impact on vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions, we want to see how we quantify them. I think I got, okay. So we use 2 data sources. One is trip activity data, and the other is a user survey from the system. And the goal here is to understand the driving behavior of users, how often do they use it, and whether they had any impact on their personal vehicle ownership, because a lot of the impacts that we observe in car sharing is from impact on personal vehicle ownership, in terms of some people would shed their own personal vehicles because now they have increased access to car sharing. or they would postpone purchasing a new car because they have access, or also they might drive less or more. These are things we observe within the system. And starting with the survey, so through the user survey, we explore this aspect of impact on personal vehicles. But what is important here, when surveying users, usually there is a tendency for more active users to be responding to the survey. And we noticed that from our trip activity data. So we were able to match both data sets together. And what was important is to reweight the impacts that we are measuring in order to not overestimate the net impacts in terms of vehicle miles traveled. So this weighting process is really important to address the survey collection methodology. The second aspect of the data collection would be relying on the activity data. And since this is an electric vehicle system, the emissions are coming from the process of charging. So from the electricity generation to charge these vehicles. And in order to measure the emissions, we wanted to know when each vehicle was being charged. And we did not have access to that data. And that is really important when setting up these systems because data need to be collected from the chargers specifically, while typically the data that was collected from the system focused on the trips, as in reservations from the mobile application. And so what we had to do in this case to address this challenge is to convert the trip activity data into a charging data. And so what we did is we defined 3 different vehicle states, whether a trip is currently in trip or is it parked at a station. And we are able then to track the movement of vehicles across the system and throughout time. And then we are able to convert trip data into charging data. And the final result would be having a charging data set where we know when each car is being parked and how much electricity it's consuming. So then we can know the corresponding emissions by using time-varying emission factors. So the emission factors vary in the state of California and everywhere throughout the year and throughout the day, depending on the electricity production sources. So having these 2 data sets facilitating the next steps for calculations, the procedure becomes more straightforward. The vehicle miles traveled are available from the activity data. And now that we have charging events, we can convert them into greenhouse gas emissions just based on straightforward equations that I'm not going to go in depth here. And finally, to look at the results that we are achieving. So when looking at vehicle shedding, we observe that around 4% of users shed their vehicles, and around 30% suppress their vehicles, and around 10% reduce their driving behavior. And these numbers are consistent with other studies, previous studies in the literature. They are a little bit more on the higher end, especially in the vehicle suppression. And the overall net VMT reduction was around 460,000 miles. And the corresponding GHG emission reduction was around 650 metric tons. And then what we did, we also considered different scenarios because of this new inclination to transition to electrification. We compared what if this system was based on internal combustion vehicles instead of electric vehicles. And we did the corresponding calculation, and it showed that using the EV fleet reduced GHG emissions by 43%. And we also accounted for whether the absence or the presence of the system, because we do have the behavior of users, how much, let's say, vehicles they got rid of or how much vehicles they postponed buying. So we have a measure of what they would have done in the absence of the system. So we also calculated that the presence of the Blue LA system reduced VMT and GHG emissions by 34% and 48% respectively. So these are more like the broader takeaways, I think, to focus on, and that each car replaced around 16 personally owned vehicles, and these are also in line like with previous studies. So I would say like the overall takeaways, like from a data perspective, is it's really important to be collecting charging data from these systems in order to accurately measure the emissions, and to be also aware of how we are surveying users in order to account for any overestimation. And this is all I have to share with you today. I wanted to keep it like high level. Yeah. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank
Or
you
if you'd like to
very
do that at the end. Yeah.
Thank you, Ziad. And it's going to be, there's going to be a Q&A later. And if anybody wants the full research paper, I think we have it on our website, but you can contact Ziad as well. Okay. So next up we have Will Schroeer from, HOURCAR and EV. And you can look these folks up too on LinkedIn. They all have their own. Okay. I think you have to stop, Ziad. There we go. Okay, Will's on. Good. Thanks, Will. Okay, we can't hear you if you're on mute.
Looks like Will's still on mute.
Will, you're on mute.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. And can you see my screen?
We can see your screen.
Excellent. Thank you, Ziad, for that. A very hopeful set of findings. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to our conversation. I wanted to just give a little bit of insight into what we're doing here in Minneapolis and St. Paul, so that when we have the conversation, you have in mind what we're doing. We're working to respond to what I imagine everyone on this call is working to respond to. Unaffordable cars, lack of transit access, and then, of course, the impacts of those two things together, which is that people can't get where they need to go. If you're not from the US, you might not know about the Urban Institute, a very respected set of researchers, and always valuable to establish what I think we hear from our users, which is if there's no transit and you can't afford a car, you can't get to the doctor, among other things. So we're trying to fix those problems. We're also working to respond to, in the US, the transportation sector is the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. We're spending a lot of money in the US on electric vehicle transition, but most of our investments are in making it possible to buy electric vehicles. And if you can't buy a car, then you are going to have a little bit of difficulty accessing some of those investments. So we want to fix that as well. And then the final issue that we're working on is one of these headlines is now 8 years old, and one of them is literally just yesterday. We used to have Car2Go in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and they left. And folks really enjoyed having access to Car2Go, and we missed them. And a lot of folks then chose to use Uber and Lyft for their transportation needs when they couldn't use transit. And Uber and Lyft says that they will leave Minneapolis and St. Paul in about 6 weeks. So we have an institutional issue of who controls access to transportation options. So we're trying to address all of those needs. And the Minneapolis and St. Paul solution is to have a paired set of electric vehicle car share. And we have 170 bolts, and which are publicly owned. They're owned by the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and public chargers in the public right-of-way. And you can see one of those right there. Each of our 70 EV spot hubs has 2 charging heads for the car share. So we always have a place to plug our car share cars in, and 2 heads for public charging. So if you need to charge your, I'm not sure what that is. It's not a Volvo. Anyway, if you need to plug in your own private car, you can do that too. We make that possible across 35 square miles of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And I don't expect that folks are necessarily familiar with Minneapolis and St. Paul, but this is a area of about 3.5 million people, 2 distinct downtowns. The state capital is on the right side of your screen in downtown St. Paul, and the bigger suburb, as we like to call it in St. Paul, of Minneapolis, is on the left side of your screen. So we cover 90% of the transit routes and a lot of the less suburban areas of the region. The picture says better together, and we implement that. Minneapolis and St. Paul working together. We own the cars, we own the chargers, and then we contract with HOURCAR to actually run the car share service. They've been doing this for 20 years. They started as a gasoline-powered two-way system 20 years ago, and they still do that, but we contract with HOURCAR to also run the free-float EV car share system. Last year, we facilitated 123,000 trips, and we served an awful lot of folks who especially needed access to those cars. We call those our Access Plus trips, and you can see the usage there. So that's a super quick trip, Pam, through our service, and looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Will. Wonderful. Okay, and up next we have Erin Sullivan from MODO, who is from Vancouver, Canada.
Hey, Pam. Hey, everybody. Thanks very much. I'll share my screen here just a sec. All right. Right, there we go. Okay, how's it look?
Perfect.
Thanks. Okay, hi, everybody. Nice to be here today. As Pam noted, my name is Erin Sullivan. I'm in Vancouver, and I've been with MODO Cooperative in the capacity of the Director of Fleet Operations for just about 3 years now. And prior to that, I was with Car2Go, who my colleague Will mentioned earlier, for close to 7 years. The time that I'm going to spend with you today is running through what we're doing in Vancouver, specifically with electrification. We can't talk about MODO without going into a really brief history of the organization. We'd be doing it a disservice to do anything otherwise. So MODO's old. We've been around since 1997, and our beginnings were relatively modest, as you can see here. We've come a long way. We started with 16 members, no technology to speak of, and 2 internal combustion engine cars, one of them, which you can see here in a photo that I found on the internet somewhere in the archives, which I just love. We've grown. So we've recently welcomed our 1,000th car. We have over 30,000 members who we help shed personally owned vehicles. We operate in BC only, and while most of our vehicles are in the lower mainland of BC, so the densest area of the province, we also share cars in Kelowna, Victoria, Nanaimo, Squamish, and we have a single car right now on the Sunshine Coast.
Which are suburbs of Vancouver. Yeah, like they're other cities.
Yeah, like we're, Kelowna's like 4-hour drive away, so it's a reasonable distance.
Right.
So
Other
our
cities.
reach is wide within the province, but it does sort of, we are just within provincial boundaries. There we go. So 2024 is a very different time in car sharing. We're not just here anymore to share cars. We want to share cars that help reduce tailpipe emissions. Each year, we're reporting to our board that we've reduced our emissions from previous years, and this year will be no different. Yesterday, when I took a look in at the fleet, we had 85 EVs available for trips by members, which is about 8.5% of the fleet. And if we're fortunate enough to acquire the number of vehicles that we want to by the end of the road or by the end of the year, we should be sitting at about 15%. And while we're pleased with that, there are definitely some complexities that I wanted to touch base with you all about today. The first one is cost. We've had some success with lobbying efforts at the federal level that I would like to discuss. After many calls and many emails to government officials over the course of many, many, many months, Patrick Nangle, our CEO, is on the call, would be able to say specifically how much longer, but a long time. Transport Canada heard our cries for equity and with respect to their vehicle purchase incentive program. So in 2023, Transport Canada increased the annual cap from what was 10 $5,000 incentives all the way up to 50 for eligible car sharing organizations. That's a huge help to us, and we are super grateful. We're not hearing the same support at the provincial level yet. In the province of British Columbia, BC allots fleets just 50 purchase incentives per lifetime. Which, when you consider the nature of car sharing, it's definitely a missed opportunity for equitable access to EVs. However, we see Transport Canada support as a reasonable starting point for like a template for governments to use when looking at how to incentivize car shares to electrify more quickly. So that's good. And now that we have incentives and we've overcome some of the supply chain issues that, my fellow car share representatives probably are familiar with over the last few years, the last component that we need to deal with is how to keep them charged. So, historically, MODO has been able to secure level 2 chargers paired 1-to-1 with the EVs that we've had in our fleet. But that's not really the case any longer. We're outpacing access to chargers. And I don't have to tell you that this is the biggest hurdle to cross. So we're trying a number of different things today. And while they're still in testing, I wanted to share a little bit about what we're doing. So first, we as a cooperative want to see if we have the ability to leverage both our members and publicly available infrastructure. This year, we've started a program where we've taken a cohort of EVs and deployed them without being paired with dedicated chargers, but placed them relatively adjacent to public chargers. We're asking members, so our cooperative members, to keep them charged by loading driving credits onto their accounts when they end their trips with more charge than they started. We're throwing out some metrics to see if that's working or not. We don't know if that's like if the amount that we're crediting them is worth their time, but we've got to play around with this to figure it out. Really what it's coming down to, and I'm sure this isn't new to most of you, but we're trying to crowdsource maintaining a charge level. Can we do that? And if so, what does it do? What does it take to make that happen realistically? Next, we have procured multiple parking spots adjacent to a single dedicated level 2 charger. And the purpose of this is to ask the question, can we share? We're instructing our members to end their trips in the stalls without a charger if they return with a reasonable state of charge. But if they return with a low state of charge, then use the stall with the charger to plug in. So multiple vehicles, single charger, can this work? What's going to break? Can we make this work? And lastly, we started experimenting with level 1 charging. And I can tell you this one's been really interesting for us. Every time I bring up level 1 with any external stakeholders, they're always quite surprised. Nobody talks about level 1, and for good reason. There's lots of reasons why it doesn't work for different types of organizations. For example, one-way car sharing would find it very, very difficult. However, for us, it's been super, super interesting. We've been doing this in a few locations since last summer, so it's been the longest test of all of the things that we've been trying so far. And at this point, we're looking to procure more locations. It's an interesting trial because there's wall outlets, as you can imagine, in all sorts of weird and wild places. And we're currently using the EVSEs that come with the vehicles that we purchase. And recently, it was mentioned to me by someone who visited a cold city in Canada that, like, in real urban Canada, there are actually a lot of wall outlets available for block heaters to be used in parking lots in the winter months, which kind of blew my mind, actually, when I thought about, sort of the potential there. I find myself every time I'm parking anywhere, I'm looking at the bottoms of walls to see if there's, anything up. Is there any way that is there a wall outlet here? Can I talk to somebody about this? It's a challenging, it's a challenging relationship when it comes to scale, but at the same time, there's definitely some great things to potentially take advantage of. And I would encourage any of my colleagues in colder climates to start thinking in that way. There's there's some potential there for you. So, you know, to finish off, we've got lots of things that we're trying. And I think the one thing that's clear to me at this point is that it's not possible to have a single strategy for electrifying a large and or distributed fleet. My advice to anyone starting this process is that if you pigeonhole yourself into thinking that, you know, because you want a single strategy for the purpose of scaling, you may find yourself behind. We really have to get creative and look at multiple ways to do this in order to be effective. And that's all I've got. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Erin. And thank you, Will and Ziad as well, for the information, just to give us fodder for our discussion. And so we're going to start the conversation, the question and answers or the comments. And I know that there are people present, Carshare organizations present, that all have also integrated EVs into their fleets. And so please chime in. It's a conversation, and so we can continue that. Erin, you're first up.
Thanks. I really wanted to get in there. Is it okay if I just ask an organic question to Ziad? Is that all right?
Yeah, ask away anything. It's good.
Awesome. Thanks, Pam. Ziad, when you were doing your presentation, I was curious about the metric around suppression, and but I was also a little bit confused by it, and I was hoping you could revisit that with us and just make it clear to, at least to me anyways, what that KPI was indicating. Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you. So vehicle suppression is when someone postpones buying a new car because now they have access to car sharing, so they can fulfill all their trip needs currently because they have access to the system. So they consider, like, I'm going to postpone buying this new car because I don't need it anymore right now. And while vehicle shedding is someone having a car right now, and because they have access, they decide to sell their car or get rid of it. So these are the two different behaviors.
And as a really quick follow-up, because I think that's super.
Yeah, help yourself. Mm-hmm.
That's the information that I would expect that my fellow Carshare evangelists would be using in order to speak with external stakeholders and to really like pull the message home. Do you know, Ziad, if your current research is being used or has been used successfully in terms of any negotiation with other municipalities outside of, you know, the one that was cited?
I don't know if there has been success yet. The research has been published like recently in January, but we did like get more like people asking like, how can we use this? How can we translate these findings? Because what's really important about two things: about one, the survey, it's specific, for example, to Los Angeles. So in that case, yes, these metrics, the suppression and shedding, are consistent with literature from other studies in other cities. But it's always like recommended, if there is already a car share system in place, to survey those users and get those like updated metrics, because then the methodology of the research can be replicated and results can be specific to a different city.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we have a question from Chris Venice from GoGet in Australia. Chris, do you want to say it, or do you want me? It's in the chat, so maybe I'll just say it. Erin, who owns or pays for the chargers you have chargers you have paid for the cars? I don't know. Chris, you want to say your question, or can you?
Maybe I could just.
Well, yeah, who pays for the chargers, I guess, and you know, especially the ones that are not related to you.
Well, so there's we have a couple of different, you know, there's more than one answer to that question. And essentially, you know, if we're in public charging infrastructure realm, we rent access to dedicated chargers from parking providers. That's one of the methods that we have used that's been really successful. We also have some that are donated through municipal use, some that are donated through agreements with property developers when they have entered into transportation demand management schemes with the municipalities that we operate in as well. So it's a little bit of everything. We expect to own some charging hardware as well as time goes on. That's definitely a given. We're just not quite there yet, or at least not in any capacity that is significant.
Okay, we have Chris Brandt. Do you want to ask the question?
Sure. Hey, Will. This question is for Will. Can you elaborate how you managed to get 70 charging hubs established? Maybe, yeah, I'm just curious about that journey, timeline, and kind of what partnerships did you have to enter into to really make that happen? That's an impressive number.
Thanks, and I think it follows on the previous question as well a little bit. It is hard to set up hubs, and so I guess the good news is that because and I'm going to use the word we broadly here, the cities chose to put the hubs in the public right of way that they already owned, right? And so that was the biggest hurdle, that they own or have the rights to the land. It's still not easy. And I'm probably not telling some of you anything you don't know, but locating the hubs requires that the regional utility be able to get the power to the hub. As I mentioned, we have 4 parking spaces at each of our hubs. So 2 for the car share vehicles and 2 for public charging. Locating 4 public parking spaces is also a lot of room. And so to locate the space and get the electricity to it and work with, the usual, are there turn lanes, are there, et cetera, right? That's all challenging. But the short answer to Christian's question is we did it by putting them on public right of way. That's the biggest hurdle.
Okay, thank you. You're next, Dave, and then Lars.
Okay, Will, I got a question for you. As someone who operates a free-floating car share, and we've dabbled a little bit with electrification.
Can you say where you're from, Dave, so we can have a bit of...
I'm from Evo Car Share in Vancouver. So it's obviously really challenging to implement electrification when it comes to free-floating. So I kind of 2 questions. One, when your system being free floating, is the areas that people can park only in those areas around the chargers, or do you also have parking in areas that are not around your charging spaces? And the second question is, for those that do park close to those charging stations, how are you incenting them to plug in?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Dave. And following on Erin, it's true free float. So they really can leave the car in any legal parking space in the 35 square miles. You do not have to bring it back to a charger. And this is the part that follows on Erin. We incentivize you to plug it back in. So we give ride credits if you plug back in. And perhaps unlike Erin, we do that whether it's charged or not. We always give you a ride credit if you plug back in, but you don't have to.
Is that working?
That's a great question, and we're trying to, again, like Erin, we're trying to figure that out.
You and Erin are both smiling. In fact, a lot of the car share organizations are all smiling here.
Yeah.
Like, how do we get this done?
And obviously there are people on from all over the world, so this is not a small group, but our technology provider is being a little bit challenged in helping us understand how often people take us up on that. So that is an ongoing challenge.
Okay.
And does anybody else from the car sharing operators world have any other comments about that in terms of, Erin, you have your hand up again. We'll start with you, but any others as well?
Well, forgive me, my hand was more just to get Will to just, if I don't know if you can or not, and it's okay if you can't, but just to elaborate on the challenges around knowing how often people are plugging in. Like if you're, I've just sort of wanted to, like if they plug in, how do you know to give them a credit? Is it organic? Like do they have to send you a message to be like, I plugged in, credit me, or do you know?
It's automatic, and so we get a summary of how often that happens, but we don't know exactly when, and we don't know when what the charge level was. So
Okay, understood. Thank you.
thanks.
How about somebody else with their solutions or their ideas around this, who've been doing it for a little while? Peter, please. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Colorado
can you hear me
Carsharing.
okay?
Yes.
Can you hear me, Pam? Yep.
Yes. And
Great.
introduce
Yeah.
yourself.
So, yeah, Peter Cranbill with Colorado Carshare. We have a much smaller fleet, approaching 100 cars, but over 30% is now electrified. And you know, we've always had just our standard gas, you know, you fill up if it's below half tank or whatever policy. And for us, it was just a matter of transferring that policy over to EVs, where it's like you're done with your trip and you just plug in. And I don't know, maybe because we're smaller, but it hasn't really been an issue. Like it's just a part of what they already understood from internal combustion engine days. We've been doing it for 25 years, and they just continue on with the plugging in at the end of their trip now.
No, thanks. Gloria Huerta from California. How are you?
Hello, I am
Nice to
currently
see
one of
you.
our Carsharing vehicles. This is Gloria with HOURCAR. I come in from a very different background because I've only been running EV Carshare. I've never had internal combustion engine vehicles, so I've been working on HOURCAR for 5 years, and what we found works for us is we have dedicated chargers wherever we are, and we do provide charge cards inside all of our vehicles so that our members charge the vehicle upon completing a trip. We do orientations with all of our members to make sure that they are aware of like how to charge. We want to make sure that, you know, this is electric vehicle community car sharing. So the most important thing that they have to do is charge the vehicle when they return it, or else the next person will call us. So we try to be very interactive. We take pictures, and we do not deploy unless we have dedicated infrastructure, because we are in rural. We've been in rural parts of California and now a little more urban areas, but it's still difficult. Even with all these things, we do have times when some of our members do not charge the vehicles. But we find out right away. We contact them. We try to make them aware of the situation, and even provide in-person orientations if it's not working out. But it's been great working on electric vehicle car sharing, and I'm really excited to join these calls and get to know more about different car shares in other parts of the world.
Thank you. Mia Carshare out of California. Lars had a question, but Lars, I'm not sure, did some of these answers satisfy your question, or did you have something more to add? Lars? Hi.
Yeah, Lars from City of Bergen, Norway here. Hi. Calling in late in the evening. Our experiences are very parallel to the Vancouver case. So I just wanted to know if Erin could explain a bit more on how they encourage members to top up their cars before returning them. Yes, I might have missed something, but if you could explain that in more detail.
No, I didn't go into a lot of detail, Lars. Thanks for asking the question. Nice to see you. So currently what we're offering them, like what we've told them, I'm not telling you this works because I don't know that it does at this point, but what we're attempting to do is say, if you return the vehicle with more charge we're starting with 20%. Like if you can do 20% more charge than what you started with, we'll give you $20 in driving credit. So we're 20% more charge. We're figuring, you know, maybe that's an investment in 15 to 30 minutes of your time, give or take. You know, is that worth $20 in Canadian dollars in driving credit? We're not entirely sure. We don't know if that's a full, you know, worth it in terms of an investment for people at this point, but that's what we're hoping that they do. We've been pretty strategic about where we place these vehicles, adjacent to reasonably fast chargers, 50 kilowatt hours and above. So we're trying to connect the dots for them. And we're also, we have this, or at least I shouldn't say we, this is purely my hope, is that maybe there's somebody out there who's like really incentivized to like, you know, do this late at night and just do a bunch of cars and sort of, you know, crowdsource the continuation of keeping those vehicles charged. We're all about that. So it's just a matter of figuring out what's the metric. Is $20 enough? Is 20% the right amount in order to keep the fleet going? Ultimately, we're just trying to find that nice fine balance where we don't have to put fleet labor at it, or, you know, emergency top-ups, at least as much as we can avoid it as possible.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I'm moving on to, because it's almost time, I'm going to the next Menti poll question, which is, if we're going to have more webinars, and so I would like to have from you some ideas on what topics you would like us to facilitate over the next year. We hope to have at least 4 more, if not more, depending on people's demands. So please fill out that, and it's basically just whatever is top of mind for you in terms of what you want to get people together to have a conversation about or learn more about. So let's see what happens. Working with cities, it's a big one. It's a major stakeholder. Nice. Financial sustainability. Just give a few more seconds. Mass. Yeah, there are some pilot projects happening in Mass, and some are working, so we could easily do one on Mass next. And working with cities, we have lots of people who have successfully managed to do that, including EV car sharing. There's a wicked webinar, or there's a wonderful video of the EV car share. So you should look that up if you haven't seen it already. It's the mayor saying how great it is. And so if there's any other way, maybe we can get him on to work on the city one. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for that. And I just want to say thank you very much for coming today. And we're hoping that it was of value to you. And if you're thinking about coming on as a member to the Car Sharing Association, just give me a call. Let me know what your needs are and how we can collectively work together to grow car sharing. And as we said, if we grow car sharing, shared mobility works. And so I just want to thank everybody for showing up today. Thank you to the speakers. And thank you for the sponsorship of Convatis. Let's just see, give him another shout out here. So thank you very much, everybody, and contact me. I'm available anytime. We can have a chat and see how we can work together in the future. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.